significantly fewer people watch women's basketball. There are plenty of theories why. Women don't score as much. They don't run as fast. They don't dunk. Women's sports, in general, are not worth watching.
The police often question him just because they find him interesting. His beard alone has experienced more than a lesser man's entire body. His blood smells like cologne. He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I prefer Dos Equis.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Wednesday. It is a new year Mattriarchy. How's that going, huh? So,
Well, that's a strong opening for the new year.
oh man, I tell you, it's with gusto, with mucho gusto. It was number one Marmaduke fans video I stole with permission that he memed from Gene Luen Yang. So
Gene is a meme. It's fitting.
And your level of like animosity toward this dude is so funny to me.
It's its own meme.
I swear there are.
Ooh, hey, can we get a pickle about this?
I think he's from what I've seen of him in person, I think he's probably fine. I think he seems to love comics, and I always give a lot of leeway to people who love comics, no matter who they are. When they genuinely love comics, he did an unboxing video of the Green Turtle. He got the custom action figure, and he just geeks out about it, and it's like, all right, you can't hate on a guy for doing that. I just what I do hate on is his. Sorry,
Larry in the private chat is busting me up here. Hey, Dave Ishanovich loves comics.
Well, then I love you too. There we go.
I tend to have the same opinion, or I try to give people some slack. I just hope that people like that tend to stick to their own thing and they don't ruin other people's comics by getting invited to be like an artist or writer on something they aren't necessarily fans of.
So
you mean like that time Ethan Van Sciver almost brought somebody to write Cyberfrog that had some questionable dating choices with
no.
I don't
can't.
The Dave Sim thing is way more nuanced than that.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
We all lost out on probably a really amazing Cyberfrog story.
Yeah, and I mean, the Dave Sim thing is way more involved than that. I mean, you've got to get back into.
It's complicated. Like Dave is kind of like Robert Heinlein, who's into a whole different level.
From what I read, it was basic cancel culture 101. He he met a girl at a con. I don't even think he remembered her. And then he met her. He met her again years later, and she was of age.
Her, but there was Yeah,
he met a girl at a con. He met her later. She was of age, and they had a relationship. And it was so basically nothing untoward happened, and people labeled him as some sort of pederast or something. And it was that's just not true.
And I want to say to be. Yeah, definitely. The whole pederasty thing was definitely not on the table, but it wouldn't be fair to say nothing untoward happened. It's just that nothing more untoward happened than an 80s PG movie. I mean, because that's the when you're looking at how old she was and the whole thing. It's very much of a Breakfast Club level of inappropriateness between people. Where I, as a fairly conservative, evangelical Bible thumper, would have shaken my finger and said, "That's not appropriate, Mr. Sims." But
sure, that's fair. As a conservative Christian, I'll be like, "Thou shalt not have sex before thou art married."
Yeah,
but
and it's probably not good to look at people like that. I mean, when I was young enough where this was a factor. When I was in my teen years, I was very appreciative. I was actually deeply thankful that God made me nearsighted so I could go to pools sinlessly.
Just take off your glasses and
I was there to swim. I was there to enjoy myself, but I knew that girls existed, and I was fond of that. But I also knew
You had a platonic idea.
There was a
It's like-
line. There was a line that I didn't want to cross, and I made a covenant with my eyes.
Well, good.
Wasn't always, and I have not always been great about that, but as a teenager at the pool, I was very thankful to be blind. I'm just going to say that.
So to bring it back to Dave Sim though, like
The internet.
the label they put on him created this like I remember thinking about Dave Sim like, oh wow, there's some sort of pederasty thing. And then when you find out the real story, you're like, oh, this isn't nearly what I thought it was. This is just a guy who, you know, met a girl and then met her later and they were both consenting adults. And it's like, okay, what's the problem here? And it's just they just want to cancel Dave Sim. Oh, I get it.
Well, the problem is they kind of connected that with some of his sexual themes in his comic.
Right. I mean, he was an edgy underground comics guy, you know. Anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because Grant Morrison and Alan Moore never put anything sexually weird in their books.
Yeah. Or Robert Crumb.
It's never happened in any of the other comic book creators who did even 10 times more disgusting, vulgar, and otherwise degenerate. Like
I'm just saying Dave Stims was the example I could come up with of like, oh, I'm just gonna collaborate with somebody else from comics and not know anything about it. Like, oh no.
So from the chat, Delicake says, I stare respectfully at the pool.
I stare respectfully at Delicake's webcom or Comic-Con webtoon. It was pretty good.
Oh yeah, man, her love between worlds is so good. And Dave says a great way to derail the main topic. Whoever brought this up, thanks.
Oh, see, and I was just talking about Mark Millar. Honestly, that was who was in my head.
But I mean, this doesn't derail the topic because aren't we talking about zines and about being on the cutting edge? This is all cutting edge stuff.
That is true. We are talking about zines. Specifically, the idea that of coming up with like, you know, some free-flowing concept about, you know, deadlines and time frames and what kind of things people had in mind. And I even thought, depending on how things go, I might even doodle while we're talking. I brought my little sketch pad because I've had a little comic that I've wanted to do for about a month, and I haven't had a chance to sit down with it yet. So I thought, who knows? Maybe I'll have a chance to do a little COVID comic.
Oh, some fun.
What?
Only 3 years late.
No, it's not. It was. The idea sprung to my mind. I could have done it as extra credit for one of my classes last semester, but I did not have time if I wanted to finish the final.
So speaking of comics, I want to share something I just discovered, and it's just kind of funny how it's apropos. But this I just stumbled upon this in and I work in an office, and in a comics, they have like a comics like library of just random materials, and so I just go in there just to soak up the atmosphere, and then I peruse the shelves, and I found a title from this, and I thought this was kind of fascinating. This is called Chester Comics, so we're definitely in the underground zine kind of art style, and this guy does history-based comics with an X, essentially. Very rough, kind of an art style, but he puts a lot of effort into like the historical fidelity. But then he like mixes it with this kind of like underground, kitschy kind of humor. So when he did, the one I was reading was the basically the French and Indian War, and then following that, the American Revolution. And there's this, he just slapped in the Empire Strikes Back in terms of like the British Empire, like striking back at things. And so he's mixing, like, again, like I said, you can see here on the left, he's, you know, using historical fidelity and portraying Robert E. Lee over here, but then he'll stick in this, like, you know, little blue crab character, and then, you know, pop culture references and stuff. So let me see if I can find, he's actually done quite a bit. So
I think that's actually an important technique in terms of those sort of things. in terms of making it applicable outside of the the stuff starched white collar sort of idea that history can carry on with it, right?
Ask
Yeah,
me
so-
why I love A Knight's Tale.
So let me.
So
let me-
yeah, and that's true. But I mean, like, think about like George Washington and the powdered wig and the imported coat and everything, and like his whole like civilian getup, like the way he carried himself and everything, was like the top line finery. I mean, it was the GQ level fashion plate. George Washington was, but now you see a picture of George Washington in the ridiculously short pants with the ridiculously tall socks, and you're like, well, that guy looks funny. You totally missed the fact that this guy was projecting his whole station in his outfit.
Not just that. When George Washington went to the Continental Congress, he was a classic example of dress for the job you want. And he dressed for the job of Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army before there was even an army.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh no, you're good. So we got some great engagement in chat already. Hiroshi Paradox says, as a hack graphic designer, I find zines to be kind of fascinating. Though every time I look into them, it feels like a medium thoroughly claimed by commies. So I wanted to kind of point out this guy here is I'd call him a trad leftist, and that's why I think this is an interesting example because he's definitely, I think, on the left. I looked into his Twitter, but he's kind of like a very respectful, like the traditional leftist you used to be able to get along with at the at your workplace. And maybe he didn't vote the same as you, but like he respected history and he respected the country and and respected your ability to exist and not call you a Nazi. And so this guy who does Chester comics, like I said, you can see here he's got some high level of historical fidelity. And although there's a little bit of leftyism here and there, it's not like this comic is like how everyone who is white in the Revolutionary War was an evil racist. That's not like the tone of his book. It's very more traditional historicism. And he peppers it in with these little jokes and things. And so it's kind of an entertaining read. This is the one, again, on Revolutionary War. But he's got quite an oeuvre. Let me see if I can find another example. Here's one he talks about government. So he does he does history and civics, essentially. Here's some aliens used to, help illustrate some points. Yeah, so you can see he's trying to straddle the middle of I think the political divide here. So here, we literally have Democrat, Republican going on here, but I don't think he's necessarily saying, one of them is the right party and the other one is the evil people, which is the kind of the level of historical depth we tend to get from a lot of.
Although I would like to point out that
days.
the Democrat is ruining Ohio.
Not so much for the balance.
I mean, is it really all that hard to ruin Ohio?
I don't know. I've never been there.
They're pretty bad at management there, even compared to some other places, especially.
I mean, they've got Cleveland. Like, Cleveland's not the best place.
So
also,
the interesting. Oh yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of making this specifically about zines, one of the things about zine culture is the idea of doing it yourself, and to the industry be damned, professionalism be damned. It's literally just I picked up a pencil and I made a comic, and so this guy here definitely fits that concept, I think. And so he just kind of, I think, picked up his pencil and went off and did it. He wrote for his school newspaper, did like the editorial cartoons, but then I don't think he has any formal artistic training. He just kind of like does them. So definitely the spirit of comics, and definitely I think a little bit of the energy that we get in zine culture. So that's just something I stumbled on today. I thought that would be kind of interesting to kind of take a look at, and even a couple of his designs for characters. They even reminded me a little bit of Forces of Good and Evil. Kind of how he draws figures.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So poorly.
I think he's better at like perspective and overall design work, but like I said, I saw a character that looked exactly like some of your characters. I was like, oh, I've seen that guy before. But he's very voluminous. Like he's put out quite a bit of stuff. I'd never heard of this guy. So anyway, zines.
Dave is correct. Ohio is a weird word. I don't think I'd really thought of it.
Wait. We talking about
I just
English
realized I'm
word
here.
or
Sorry.
Japanese word.
Yeah, there was no like warm intro. You're just dumped hot into it.
I think I was hiding at the bot, like underneath the pinned comment or something, so I didn't see my.
Well, yeah.
But it does say I'm in the
show.
show. I could just read, so that's my bad. Hey guys, Cleveland is pretty good. I don't know if you've been to Cleveland the last few years, but they've really cleaned up.
I've never been to Cleveland. I just know it's there, and people complain about it.
Yeah.
They also got Columbus. That's in Ohio.
Dayton,
Akron.
Akron.
There you go.
These are all cities in Ohio.
These are all cities in Ohio. Hey,
Toledo,
Ohio,
which has
we see
the
you.
Mud Hens, and
Akron.
Toledo was also the source of a war between Ohio and Michigan, which is now perpetuated in a football rivalry, much like Kansas and Missouri have their football rivalry.
So
They
this
do.
is continuing the history theme.
Apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Fun. That was a cool zine. That's I mean, isn't that everything? Like I guess he's been doing this for years, right? So he's already figured out how to put his zines on the App Store, which is kind of interesting.
I wouldn't call him a zinester. But he's definitely in the comics with an X. So I was using him as an example of, oh, hey, I just stumbled on this, and so it's definitely, I think, fitting to talk about for a moment, draw attention to him. But
I mean, he's got a business he could market with that. Like, here I'm gonna throw some cheap disposable comics into schools that need educational content for young men, primarily who are poor readers. Have some history comics.
Yep. But to Hiroshi's point, a lot of zines do end up being on the commie side, and there's a reason for that, and it's because
what's the reason?
Well, reasons, right? Zines were often bred out of revolutionary movements. So the women's lib movement, the queer LGBTQ movement.
Well, I mean, it's the quintessential pamphlet, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and Thomas Paine and all that stuff.
Yeah, but there's an added layer of transgressiveness that zines embrace that tend to fit more radical political and social ideological movements, because when you have people who are trying to overturn the current sexual system. The current system of how sexuality is treated in the country, the ability to very cheaply visually shock people. And so, like, whether you're scrawling something vulgar or whether you're just essentially just putting porn on paper and then Xeroxing it, so that you can overturn the people who would, censor your rights to express yourself, your liberated self. The zine, I think, fits the bill for.
I like my answer better.
And in the way you're describing the zine as a political document, it's also very similar in the communist era to Samizdat, I think that's how you pronounce it, which also has a comic book connection because some of the ones that were used as anti-communist paraphernalia did feature comics. And one of the more interesting public domain comic book characters, Octobriana, came out of that sort of literary movement as well.
What is that?
Octobriana?
Yes.
So there was a Czech comic book author or I think he was a Russian comic book author who tried to say that this was a secret underground Czech comic book. And then he tried to copyright and trademark it, but he did such a good job of saying that it was done by secret anarchist communist comic book creators, he couldn't prove he actually created it. He did such a good job, muddying the waters.
How do you spell this? I must see it.
Just a second.
Octobriana.
Hey, Twitless, where do you rate? Where do chick tracks fall in the comics?
As zines?
Are they kind of trying to overthrow the establishment of the cultural establishment in a revolutionary way, maybe as a dissident voice?
The only thing that I'll say that
Boy, Chick would really hate you even asking that question. I've got to say,
right?
I just want to frame it that way because I think there's room for that, but maybe there's more variables needed.
I guess like you'd have to have a collection of.
That's what I was going to say. I think zines tend to be a little bit more of like their publications where they tend to do more than just do one thing. Mm-hmm. Chick tracks are more pamphlet. They really are in the pamphlet territory. But I'm glad you brought that up because I do think that they are sister publications.
They're in the same family.
Yeah, and now that you bring that up, I was just reading Daniel Clow's 8-Ball. Which is an underground comics publication, not a zine, but he did a really good workup of a Jack Chick comic in his own work, and he plays it.
The D&D comic?
No, it was. I think there was something they mentioned D&D in it, but it was mostly like these. It was played pretty straight, and it was very interesting because this Klaus was being very subtle in his satire, and so you can read it as almost as a straight Jack Chick tract of like the dangers of getting involved in the occult and drugs and rock and roll and everything. And he subtly parodies the extremities of fear mongering with that. But at the end of this, at the end of the tract, it ends like a traditional Chick tract. The people who are tempters end up in hell. The devil is torturing them, and the girl is saved and essentially going to heaven. So it was like,
wait a minute though,
played out exactly the way it was supposed to.
Is this a Chick track or a Batman track?
I'm sorry, what?
Well, that joke went over people's head, I guess. Batman hates rock and roll.
Roshi's got the best comment here. I only ever find Chick tracks waiting in puddles in public bathroom floor stalls. So the guerrilla distribution of it seems super zany.
That is true.
It feels like this is the only way to distribute is in this very transgressive type underground way where you're just like guerrilla distribution. They're never sold, they're never in stores.
Well, the crazy thing about that is you've got this with the Chick track thing is the people being the transgressive, societally transgressive people are like, school marms and grannies and church ladies.
Well, right? So like, I just want to,
what is culture at that point, right?
Yeah, you can go at it and you can transgress it from a lot of different angles, which is interesting.
So, Jim, you've walked into a very fun show today. That's what you've walked into.
Jim walked in at the exact proper moment. Apparently.
And the aesthetic of something found in a bathroom stall was what Iron Sights from Richard C. Meyer. That was the aesthetic he was going with that art.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And that's how Ibai got a whole bunch of work. Because he drew that grungy vibe.
Like, the condom dispenser you find in a truck stop bathroom.
Yeah.
But instead, it's just like a bunch of tracks that are lying there. You put a quarter and it pops one out.
That's amazing.
I gotta wonder, it would be a different kind of writing structure, but like, how much could you mass produce something like a Jack Chick track?
Oh, there's a reason why Jack Chick and David Daniels is able to very authoritatively proclaim that Jack Chick is quite possibly the most widely read comic book creator on the planet. Because if you go to the website, you can order like print runs of like 10,000 and they come out pretty cheaply. And people order them by the 10,000 and then distribute them globally. It's like the most globally distributed print comic of like all time.
But like, I was thinking, you do something more structured, like a newspaper comic strip, but you put it in a book like a Chick Track. You could probably do something pretty cheap for creating a story and getting into an audience's hands pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
So we just have this secret underground Zine going?
Zine. They're zines. They're
I'm
not
sorry.
zines.
Like
Okay,
magazine.
who is the idiot who decided to spell it with an E at the end? Please.
You
It's
Philistine.
the same as it's the same as magazine. It's literally just the end of magazine.
They just took
You mean
magazine
magazine?
and cut it in half. No, oh
Because
gosh.
here you go.
Oh my goodness.
It's apostrophe Zine.
Magazine. Oh my goodness.
That's what I think it was Dave.
Okay.
David was
Yeah, it was
making
up
that joke
earlier in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dave was in there earlier asking if there are magazines. There ought to be. There ought to be.
You could
I mean,
change
that was really
himself.
what Art the Donald was in a certain respect in some of this stuff they did on Poll back in the day.
That's true. It was. Yeah. But we never saw anyone actually take that. Well, I guess it's just such a obvious pun. It's not even funny. Maybe.
I'm gonna make a
but-
manga zine.
Yeah.
There we go.
Exactly, Dave. Exactly. Jack Chick, then Garfield.
All right,
I'm
so
just saying it's a similar book structure.
So I want to pull up a couple of examples so we can take a look at them together, but I need to make sure I take a glance at them first so that, I don't pull up one that's got like porn on it. Because like I said before, sexual lib was a large chunk of some of this. And so you can run into some really disgusting stuff if you're not careful.
We can't get in trouble with Susan.
That's what yeah. But a lot of them, once you've seen a few of them, you start to notice some patterns for just kind of like, how they kind of like what you're in for. So and I can pull up things like Batmania as well, or Alter Ego, which would be the superhero industry ones. But to be honest, those are kind of tame by comparison. Often. So it's kind of cool to see some of the more radical ones. But I guess I'll pull up Alter Ego or something after we take a look at this one. But you can just taking a look at this, right? You can even see just how guerrilla it is and how we've got like, it's only 50 cents. These were usually they were sold in the sort of like you run into the guy or you meet him at a convention or something and he's handing them out.
Photostat and they're gonna stack at the head shop.
Right. Oh yeah. And everything is meant to look purposefully handmade. If not actually handmade, it's meant to evoke that kind of idea. You're whipping out your typewriter, you're whipping out a pencil and paper, and you're doing a lot of collaging, a lot of pastiche kind of stuff, and you're just making it seem kind of thrown together, and that thrown togetherness is what gives it its raw energy, essentially. And that's kind of the what you're often channeling with zines. What you're also channeling in a lot of these, though, is you're channeling some of the raw fandom. And so you'll get some very in-depth and honest reviews of material. So, for example, like for some of the punk rock stuff, you'll get people who... The thing about zines that makes it the opposite, the absolute opposite of what has happened to the mainstream industry for like Marvel and DC. Marvel and DC has been co-opted by people who don't really like Marvel and DC that much. And so that's why everything seems kind of fake and hollow. When you go to like the Marvel channel and you see like basically 3 wine moms talking about recipes that have to do with Namor somehow. It's like these people didn't grow up reading Namor and loving Namor. They're just here because it's the popular thing and, they're there's no, like I said, it's soulless.
Or they're
in
trying to
the
make it the
culture.
popular thing. Because
Sure.
let's face it, peoples. As much as I love all aquatic heroes, Namor has not been popular since 1945.
Oh,
Just facts.
I mean, at least in the 90s, he was briefly interesting when he ran an oil company.
I disagree.
There
He
have
was
been really
cool.
great stories, but he's been ever since like timely folded the first time, right? Then they've never been able to bring him back to the A-list again.
He got
Can I
close.
just say-
He got
Well-
close with when they made him essentially a member of the X-Men. And then around I think he peaked around Avengers versus X-Men because he was one of the Phoenix Five. Like he was like a top tier. I am a in your face presence.
Right? No, I
And,
mean he was he's been potent in individual stories, but not as like some sort of cultural touchstone.
The problem with characters like both Namor and Aquaman is that they were great until comics tried to shove them into a group made primarily of 90% people who have to stay on dry land all the time.
No, Namor doesn't have that problem.
That's not the issue. I gotta disagree with that. The problem,
The real issue, they don't lean into the sex appeal of the characters, right? That's when Aquaman started getting popular again. Is when they started leaning into the sex
the
appeal.
homo aspect.
And I think actually,
yeah, because it does work in a movie. You just have to do what movies do best.
When it's like one of the things they have is it's not just the sex appeal thing. It's what that implies, right? So
Yeah, everything that comes with it.
Everything that comes with it. So
man and all that
So
stuff.
he's the big manly man. He'll be the the protector, and that's like one of the things that Aquaman, like as husband, as father, like the things that like get touchstones with Aquaman fans. But those are never things that DC will go whole hog on. They're always like, we have to find some. Oh, you can't be happy and then go to work and be a hero.
Except for the Batman, the Brave and the Bold cartoon. In the Brave and the Bold cartoon, Aquaman, Mera, and his kids, they were like a family together. They even went on an RV vacation.
Yeah, Aquaman was like overflowing with.
But the whole point of that cartoon was to basically go.
I'm gonna interject. I have to wrangle this back to the point where
We got to get off talking about.
So,
Dave, I want one last Namor take because Dave's got this right here.
Vote Namor for king.
No, that's not what I meant. This one. Sorry, Mrs. H.
That's pretty.
That's really close. That's really good. I like that.
Jim Tooner has got a wonderful take. Namor was just the star of that Black Panther movie. He is part of the Wakandaverse now, and Latinx. Thanks, Jim.
Why do you hurt me? Why do you hurt me, Jim?
Thanks for ruining our day.
We're not even pronouncing the between the letters anymore.
Well, no, it's Latinx.
That's the joke. So okay, I got to wrangle this.
I call
back.
it Latinx.
So the difference here between that culture and zine culture is rabid fans typically of something, and you will often get like really honest takes. Someone who'd be like, I live and breathe this thing, and so when I say that I like it, you can kind of trust me in the fact that I'm the type of person who made a zine. I'm the type of crazy weirdo who printed and self-distributed a zine, and so you can trust my opinion when I tell you that I'm a Superman or like one of the early superhero zines I'll pull up in a moment. It's called Batmania. Bill Joe White, who was like probably did win an award for being like world's largest Batman fan. And so when he wrote a whole bunch of stuff on Batman, you could take it very seriously from the fandom side because there wasn't anything fake about it. It was born out of the pure passion that only fandom could create.
An absolute crazy person.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is what we're trying to get into.
So you kind of have to.
Well,
be
I am an absolute crazy person, so I'm fine with this.
I mean, yeah, I'm gonna say like most of us are. A lot of people who actually make comics are. You kind of have to be a little unhinged to
On some degree, yeah.
Yeah.
being involved in the arts takes somebody with a broken soul.
Ouch.
I wouldn't say my soul's broken. My mind probably.
Oh, we lost. We lost Metzi.
Yeah, he mentioned. I'll read his thing. I don't know if he's supposed to, but he put it in the private chat, and I have to share this. He said, "I got to go streaming about a millennial who doesn't think Rome exists at 10." And I'm like, that show sounds so much better than this one. No offense to anybody involved, but like that's fascinating stuff to me.
we should just.
I think I know about that one too. I've seen it was a TikToker who's been going around with this like Rome doesn't exist theory.
Yeah, which is the dumbest, like absolute, like sub midwit level nonsense I've ever heard.
There's
you'd be better off believing Timbuktu didn't exist than Rome.
It was a
didn't
conspiracy
exist.
by the Spanish.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
there was a conspiracy theorist who came out with a theory that everything before the 1600s wasn't real. And he did that because he found out that there are too many things from like 1545 to the present that have mathematical similarities to be anything other than a giant conspiracy to things in the more distant past.
That sounds like propaganda that was spread through a zine.
It was actually.
But that's one of those things that, like, you know, anybody with an understanding of history knows that, you know, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes.
So, on a related note, I picked up a zine in a gas station on a family vacation by the John Birch Society, talking about how there was an elaborate plan for Colin Powell to overthrow the government and be military dictator to stop the United States government from its vast overspending in unconstitutional ways.
No,
and then I later
buy that because Colin Powell was 100% down with overspending.
Then I later found out that the entire plot of it was actually a play/movie from the 1950s.
Okay.
So back to Zines.
Back to Zines.
A couple other things I wanted to point out is, again, this very combination of some very interesting things where you'd get, you know, interviews with up and coming people who are in a particular scene, whether that's punk rock or comics or what have you. And like I said, you get, you know, people just scrawling comics and artwork in the margins. And so it's very much a celebration of a particular fandom in a lot of ways, and often paired with or synchronized with a lot of, you know, radical politics. So that is often why
radical politics.
I'm just saying that there is a reason why those things often coincided. So what I think is interesting is that as the political right has been more and more silenced.
Well, that's really, in a lot of ways, that's how the blogosphere got its start, and why it was such a big deal is because the political right was shut out of media streams, and so they just started writing about it on the internet.
Well, that's the point I'm trying to make here, in a sense, is that we can basically, you know, as the right gets more and more pushed and, you know, constrained, even from the blogosphere at this point, I think that actually starts generating the pressure necessary to embolden the sort of zine energy, because you don't tend to see as much zine energy coming out of mainstream. Probably a few exceptions. Speaking of which, I'm going to pull up Batmania here in a second. But the reason why I like pulling up the non superhero versions, and you'll see why in a second, is the fact that there's an embrace of non-professionalism. And when you get into things like Batmania, which is I am pulling up, there's a little bit of that, but there's also a lot of mimicry of what is in the mainstream. Which ends up kind of, I think, working at slightly cross purposes. So you'll notice that with Batmania, because it's the Batman fanzine, there's this desire to be like, I want to draw Batman properly, as well as do some sketches and doodles.
Oh God, which cover is that? That's actually a famous Batman cover.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
the guy's just he even put the copyright here. He's not, you know, I think he's just tracing, or, you know. So he does some of the sketches, he does some of the doodling, but there's definitely a desire to imitate the proper way to do it as well. And there's something, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but Batmania was a for a time a pretty well-known ancillary publication for Batman. I believe Bob Kane himself ended up authorizing some of it, and I think he may have even authorized, I don't know if he authorized Bill Joe, but one of the
Captain Bill Joe.
Okay. But some of these people got like official recognition as being like, you're the official lore master of Batman. You're the one who always writes the letters to the editor pointing out the continuity errors. Zine culture. You notice a lot of it. I will say that I think the most common element that I see is typewritten font. So if anyone has a typewriter, now is the time to pull it out. Because if you want to do zine stuff,
I mean, I have a typewriter font on my computer.
See, but that's not going to replicate the typewriter mistakes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when the typewriter gets it wrong, and for a zine,
Is that a challenge?
I mean, look. Dan Rather wasn't able to get the typewriter font right, and that's what doomed his career. I was actually heavily active. I was heavily active in blogs when that all happened. I was there the moment.
Holy cow, man! This is going deep. This is deep.
I was the young person farting around at blogs, and I was hanging out with all the cool kids, like going, "Well, wait a minute, that typeface isn't right at all."
That typeface wasn't invented until
1990 something.
Yep. And let's just
here's
not
my
talk about
question.
birth certificates, okay?
Here's my
Something.
question. If Zines have traditionally
zines.
been,
Oh my gosh! If I could
Zines.
beat this into you,
Zine is
You're gonna
like
have to.
Zine.
if
Zine
Zines have
is like Zine.
traditionally been in large part political, is there going to be a hurdle going
they're
in
not
from the
necessarily-
perspective of comics and nerdy stuff and whatnot?
No, it's not necessarily about politics, but it's about the like your zine is focused at a particular like subgroup, right? So
Right.
like, I mean, sometimes that has a political bent. Often it has a political bent to it because of where it's made. Like the Village Voice kind of had that same kind of thing when it was first starting, kind of underground newspaper kind of thing. It was a little higher budget than zines were, but Rolling Stone got its start from people that were making zines and then got money to make a magazine out of it, right? So there's some of that, but it's usually focused on a geography or focused on a particular music scene or art scene or location.
So the thing is that those music scenes and art scenes typically tend to have a political a predominant political leaning, and most of the time it was
ethos.
Right, and most of the time it was heavily leftist. That's just what
So the
we saw.
point though is it known for being extremist, and does that cause a problem for us?
Yes, slightly.
Okay.
But I think it's just known for
So-
being counterculture, which
Yeah,
changes
I mean
from time to
that,
time.
that's exactly okay. So like
So we should try to think of a way to use that in our favor.
well, I mean, and that okay. So like it's going off the metals thing. It's about counterculture, right? So like a good example of that is like the Ramones, right? So the Ramones were the granddaddy for punk bands in some ways, right? But like half of them were Dems and half of them were Republicans, right?
But they all talked about voting for Reagan to annoy their fans.
Yeah, well, but it was because, right? Like, so Johnny was pretty outspoken as a Republican because he felt it was counterculture, right? and Joey was like, no, the Dems are the counterculture, and like that was an argument that they had between them, right? So that was one of the plays on it. So like they both came from it. So like the punks of the fandom were like, well, both of them hate the man, so I guess we can like them still. They just had different definitions of who they thought the man was,
So what about trying to go at that from that kind of take that countercultural approach and be like something like very non-traditional comics.
Well, I I think that's
I think
kind of
we're already doing that.
yeah. That is a funny argument. I agree. Oh yeah, and I think that's a big part of it is
So,
we are looking at
Hiroshi. Sorry, Hiroshi brings up an interesting point that I do want to address. He says, "I see a lot of people making zines now, or Zines, if you want to be wrong." I'm just messing with you. I see a lot of people making zines now that are themed fan art and fan fiction publications. People are kickstarting or even selling on Etsy, and many of them are even digital publications. So I want to push back a little bit on the digital part. A lot of the true believers in zines really believe in the physical medium aspect of it. And a lot of people, like I did some when I studied a little bit of this, there was a whole surprisingly contentious debate about the permanence of zines and even the idea of preserving their memory. For some creators of zines, they were meant to be things that were on paper, and they were meant to be ephemeral. They were meant to be disposable, personal. They were not meant to last. And so there has actually been a few issues with this because people who wanted to document, for example, the LGBTQ alphabet soup, were collecting
Stonewall and all that kind of stuff.
Well, they were collecting. There's been these attempts to go, oh, we need this. This is history. We need to preserve this. And there have been people who were like, people who are now in their 50s or 60s who were like, oh, that zine that I meant to distribute when I was going through a very radical phase of my life got a bunch of naked photos of me. And now that is being not only preserved, it is now essentially being made accessible online for a massive audience. I did a print run of 200 of these and gave them out to 50 of my friends back when I was doing this little radical lesbian thing. And now that's just being made available to billions of people. I'm not okay with that. Take that off the internet. And so, like I said, that the whole idea of zines being physical media is often seen by creators as being a intrinsic aspect of them. It's intrinsic to their value. So when you have one, it's like, oh, I was there at that particular convention. I was there at that political moment. I was there at that protest. I got that zine. There's a memory. There's a physical aspect to that. I preserve that in my own way, as opposed to having it just online. And so it's interesting because it opens up a very, like I said, a very contentious at times debate about what these things are and what they mean to the people who make and receive them.
Well, and I've even talked to people, like there's a zine library down in Denver, and I've never been, but I've communicated with one of the curators a few years ago because they're really involved in like a local zine con that was active before 2020, and I'm not sure if it still is after that. But I've talked to some folks that make them that, like, if it's not Xeroxed, it doesn't count in their mind. Like these guys are really like, no colors, no, whatever. And so that's one of the things, like, don't make it on a word processor. What kind of a savage are you?
So that's like there was some creation where it was like, some zinesters will like, I bind my zines together with twine. Like it's not even like some people, like they literally will like use rope or something. It's like, I'm not even going to use staples. And so when you get them, it's like a handmade, there's this handmade tactile traditional publication aspect to it. It's like someone made this,
which means they were distributed to a whole 12 people.
Exactly. That's the point. That's the energy of zines often runs counter to the impulse of mass distribution. That's the point of a lot, not all. Like I said, as this conversation is probably imparting to you, to our audience, zines have lots of, the approaches to them are as varied as, the
colors of the wind.
Right. Yeah. That being said, you do tend to find certain trends and patterns. Well,
I'll have to point out that at least half the artists who are going to be working on this will probably be digital artists. Just saying.
You own a pen and paper, don't you?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
You
We'll
got
crowdfund.
a Dollar Tree around the corner, right? I mean,
I will
that's where I buy my art.
I will crowdfund cartoon buy me a pencil and paper fund.
So
I have a
let's
a $5
You will
tier.
personally mail it to your house.
So, do you have a comic zine example
I'll
that's
drive
not
it,
like?
You know what?
That's not
I
a
would
fan
actually.
mag?
Sorry, go ahead there, Larry. Sorry.
I was saying, do you have an example of a comic zine that's not a fan mag? Because that's something I think that might help everybody wrap their head around this this highbrow concept a little bit better.
Wait. So you want 'cause the one I'm looking at? You want one that's comics related, but not.
Not talking about like, hey, here's the latest stuff that's going down with Batman. So Batman slaps his kid after his foster dad dies. That's not cool.
Yeah. Two things on that. One, Hiroshi Paradox points out, you look up mini comics, you can find a lot of zine comics, which is true. Another thing to point out, he says, I dislike this rigid idea of what makes a zine a zine. Mm-hmm. Mostly the DIY, no rules approach to publishing with nothing but a home printer and a long arm stapler is exciting.
No, that's yeah.
That's
yeah.
the thing, and that's part of why, like the conflict between these, those two schools, the idea behind, if it's not made like X, then it doesn't count, is because, like, in this person's mind, right, that's the rawest form of it, right? That guy's stuck in the world where you 10 cents a copy at the library is how you make copies, right? The idea that you could have a publishing studio sitting on a TV tray in your den, like, I can't even comprehend that we're living in a stage like that. Much less, and then you can commission a hardbound book that you do everything on, then Amazon prints for you in a robot printer and ships to you. Like we're living so far beyond where the origin of this guy's concept of what a zine could be. He's not even prepared to deal with the future we're living in. I mean,
making copies
trying to explain DNA to Charles Darwin. No ability to concept it.
Making copies with a copier. I want to carve my copies out of brass and make letters and plates.
Yeah,
and put them on a plate and ink it.
Right?
So
the
what
most thing you can do is say, screw him, and I'm going to do it the way I want to do it.
Well, exactly. So what if you rebelled against the system by going as corporate and big name as you could possibly get? And then publish it all online.
Oh, that's
and charge a subscription fee.
You're getting some Ryan Johnson level of subverting expectations here, man.
So, bro, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna distribute my zine on Patreon and locals.
Well, actually, there could be some good like liminality to it, to where like only the people who subscribe to, say, like the Patreon or whatever can see the zine. It's only there on the page. They can't download it or anything. And then, like, after a month or whatever, the post deletes, and they were only able to experience it during that month of the subscription.
Well, why don't we just ship them out with disappearing ink?
Yeah.
So it wears, it heat printed, so it just wears away over time.
We go Hiroshi so Paradox. Underground that we change the name and we call it a Zine.
Yeah. I've heard people who are like, if you didn't steal a Sharpie or a ballpoint pen from the bank to make it, it's not a zine. Dude, I've met people like that. You're not lying.
That's where I get all my ballpoint pens from. So,
yeah, I get them all over. I'm equal opportunity.
Okay, so how about this? A stream zine.
Isn't that what we're doing?
Basically, yeah.
Isn't that what I do on the show every time we do it? We just sort of low budget, spit it out there, let everybody take a look at it. It's warts and all.
So to answer Larry's question earlier about, is there a comics one that's not a fanzine? I don't know if I'm sure there's something out there, but what you tend to see, apart from Batmania and Alter Ego, is you tend to see comics be a very important part of other types of zines. So whether it's the punk rock ones or the queer ones or the feminist ones, there's a lot of comic going on, but it's not like comics are the main focus. The focus would be like, this is a queer zine, this is a feminist zine, and there's just comics all over it, or in, a chunk of it. And so like, if you pick up a zine, worth its salt, there's usually comics of some form in it. Even if it's just doodled scrawlings, it's you're gonna see, comics are very much a part of that, but they tend to, I don't think, to like focus on the comics themselves,
unless it's a fan thing, like Alter Ego started out as. Right?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Alter Ego and Batmania are fanzines specifically about. But Larry is asking about non-fanzines, so I was trying to.
Well, you're gonna see one when we make it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to wrap my head around the direction we're moving towards here on the zine project.
Well, what Twiddless just said, I think, is very helpful for a project that's done by a group of people, because different people can be in charge of different kinds of material. This person creates a comic, this person writes an article, etc., etc.
I've actually read role-playing games zines where you'll have someone will slap in a scenario, someone will talk about a rule idea, someone will throw in an NPC, someone will throw in some art. And from a role-playing game perspective, all of that sort of flows into how it's going to be used once it gets into your hand. And for the fan zines, I get it. We're like talking about, this is the Rob Liefeld zine, talking about how actually Rob draws feet really well. You just don't understand what he's going for with his feet. And pouches are cool. And I get where that's coming from. I'm just trying to figure out where this vibe is coming towards, or what we're trying to create.
So the project that I'm talking about with Matt C at the moment, and so I'm glad, I'm kind of bummed he left, because I wanted to kind of talk it over.
Talk about Rome again.
Yeah, I know, right? I think it depends on the group of people who are working on it together. I don't know. I think it starts with just talking about stuff and figuring out, like, what people are interested in. Right. I was talking about with certain creators, and some of them were comics CG, some of them were not CG, some of them were CG light, decaf, whatever. And it was kind of like a mixture of interviews and comics from people who were very much some of them who already had a lot of very underground energy. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Street Champion Road Warrior Drake by Elasmat.
Yes.
Yeah,
I am familiar. I've
been
him before.
Yeah. So Elasmat,
like an anime title.
It's not. Elasmat is someone who I think was going to be on our short list of talking to for being getting super involved. The way I envisioned it was to have like a featured creator for the zine whose work would be highlighted, and then have them pencil and paper whip something up. It could be connected to their primary work. It could be something completely different. But Matt C had volunteered, was very excited to just pull a pen out. And I think Elasmat would be someone else who'd be really interested in that. And then so I was thinking one good way of doing this would be to kind of have a highlighted kind of creator who maybe draws a, can do with paper or pencil and pen, and you give them like a week. You know what I mean? Like, so keep it short, keep it simple, make it so that you're not waiting weeks and weeks and months and making the whole project drag. And in a similar time frame, then saying kind of sending the call out to other people who want to also get involved with pencil and paper and what have you, and say, hey, you've got a month. We're looking for short little comics that are, between 1 and 2 pages or something, or even, strip comics. We're looking for people to doodle in the margins. We'll send it to you.
I will volunteer to do either a 1 to 2 page parody comic of whoever the highlighted artist is at any given point in time.
Oh, that's funny. I like that. And then what I wanted to do, one of the contributions that I was really hoping to do that I think some people thought would be interesting, is I wanted to do some off the cuff, somewhat semi off the cuff, but hard hitting interviews. So part of what I was hoping to do is capture that energy of those zines where you get a side of someone that you don't get on YouTube. Because YouTube is something that is on the internet for all time, ostensibly. And a zine is something that could be thrown away in a trash can somewhere. And so there's this idea that you could ask someone maybe a very personal question in an interview in a very small print run of something that you wouldn't necessarily be as comfortable asking on a live stream in front of a live audience, that kind of thing. So part of what I wanted to do is for the featured artist, ask some hard-hitting, invasive questions, and then advertise it as, hey, you send us a couple dollars, we mail you this zine, and in it are not only some interesting comics and some features, but also like a side to an artist that you have not seen, where I will be asking not just like, hey, how are you doing? What influences did you have? I'm going to ask like, some very uncomfortable questions. And I think that, to me, I think that side of it captures some of the zine energy. I think there's also an interest to get to know someone, some of the creators, even on our own stream panel, some people who maybe want to get to know Cartoonicus in a way that's not just, hey, show us your influence map, which I know you have one because you've shown it to me. But
I need to update it.
What?
I need to update it.
Okay.
Big time.
But there are questions that I could ask you. I'm not going to ask them on stream, but there are questions that I know I could ask you that it's like, here's a question. And Cartoonicus actually has surprised me in the past by how his insights into my ideas and work, because he knows me really well. So he can ask me uncomfortable questions. So what I'm saying is that this is another side that I think would be a big selling point.
So the point is to be uncomfortable.
I mean, the point is to be radical in our own way. Oh, you drew a plate.
Twitless, why did Omega Girl throw the villain into the warehouse full of Garfield toys, which sets the Garfield toys on fire?
See, that's not uncomfortable enough. I was literally like, you just wait and see the questions I was going to ask Matt C. He was like going, oh wow. So I was getting personal, like, hey, so I'm detecting this kind of thing going on in your work. Tell me about something in your personal life, that impacted this, because I was picking up on it, that type of thing. And that's not the type of question that I would feel comfortable asking him on a live stream. But for a radical zine type project, I totally would. So you want to see what makes Matt C tick, or a Lazmat. I'm gonna have to be careful with the Lazmat because he's had some personal tragedies. I don't want to get too bad there, but yeah, there's some very interesting levels that we can plumb. In addition to that, I had some other ideas that I think would allow another thing I was really hoping to be able to do was to find ways to get some of the big names in independent comics, whether that's Comicsgate or not Comicsgate. But, a lot of those people get asked all the time, Dale Keown, draw me a cover, Ethan Van Sciver, let me on your show. And it's gotten to the point where those creators have had to put up a lot of barriers because, even if they wanted to be nice, even if they were nice, and depending on the creator, right? There's not enough time to be nice to everybody. And so what I wanted to do was also provide an opportunity to create a publication that could feature something like one sentence reviews of the first 4 pages of someone's comic that we send to somebody who and collect those and literally say to one of these, big name guys, hey, love to feature something of you in a zine. I only need 15 minutes of your time. Because one of the big problems when we're asking for these big names, we're often asking for a lot of their time, and their time is worth money, right? And so for a guerrilla publication like a zine, I feel like the only way to really make this work and make it have some appeal is to be like, Chuck Dixon, do you have 15 minutes and an internet connection? I can show you 4 pages of comic. You give me your first impressions. I'm going to slap it in this zine. Or
come on, Chuck. I just want a quote. Just a quote.
All I need is a quote.
I just know you're going to go for Liefeld first.
I don't know if Rob would be a great get. I would love it. But Mike Barron, I think, might be one of the first people I reach out to. I think Mike's has been shown openness to. Participate.
He's got some wild things to say.
Yeah, you might make Mike.
Yes, he does. Neostar says, "Can your character defeat King Kong?" Yes. Would they survive an apocalyptic wasteland? Depends on how long before you could get access to certain resources. What toppings do they put on their pizza?
Pineapple.
If it's Omega Girl, she would probably keep it pretty on the healthy side. She's big into clean living. What color underwear does your character prefer like that? So the last question would be the slightly uncomfortable one. Neostar, the questions I'm thinking about, how can I give a preview? Because again, part of the thing is you have to read the zine in order to really see the types of questions I'm going to ask.
Who broke your heart, and was it in high school? Because that's what it feels like from the story you wrote.
That's getting close to the type of question I was going to ask.
Oh.
Yeah. All right, Matt Reese, you've been muted for a bit. You're saying something very interesting, but
I've been yakking for who knows how long. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I said, I think I can venture a guess on the underwear question.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do we really go there?
Girl, here's the thing. Omega Girl is a girl. So she has several different pairs, and none of them are your business.
That's fair. That's a good answer.
She's a Paragon superhero, therefore, Superman, red. Underwear on the outside.
No. Superman's got underwear underneath, and he wears classic tidy whities like a true American boy.
Yes,
this is true. He might have changed them up after he got hitched. Sometimes wives have things to say about what you wear.
He might be on boxer briefs.
I don't know. I think nobody probably pulls off the tidy whities quite like Clark does. She probably likes the way he looks in them.
Okay, all right. That's enough of that.
No, and that's a whole different kind of zine.
Yeah, those are the types of zines you'll see quite a bit of.
The first movie did have something to say about this.
Neostar just keeps on hitting the questions, and let's see here. What band would play your character's theme song? I actually have a personal theme song for Omega Girl. I think that the creator was a fan of something like Plastic Love. My pick was Legends Never Die. It's a League of Legends song. It's really good.
I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, it's a good song. Would your character be afraid to lose their hands or feet?
Who wouldn't? What kind of? I'm not trying to be rude. I really am not, Neo. But isn't everybody afraid of losing their hands and feet?
Maybe if you're like
we're talking about phobia,
telepath who hasn't used their hands in years anyway.
Let me phrase it this way. I thank you, Neo, for asking these. I'm going to answer them all. So Omega Girl would be naturally not wanting to lose hands or feet, but if she was saving someone's life, she wouldn't think twice. She's the type of character who will sacrifice. She will not sacrifice anyone's life, but she's very willing to lay down her life to save others, and pretty much without blinking. That's how much of a paragon of just life and justice that she is. And that's one of the reasons that attracted me to the character. And eventually we're going to put her up against a villain who's literally the polar opposite of in terms of that philosophy. A character who is willing to sacrifice anything and anyone to achieve his goals, while she kind of stands at the, at the pass to stop that type of thing. In all fairness, Twitless, I wasn't asking about Mega Girl specifically. I was asking what kind of questions would work. Oh no, the questions I'm thinking about asking are like invasive questions. Here's the thing. Here's the elephant in the room that we often don't talk about as artists, is the fact that most of us are being sneaky little gits, and we are working through and consciously and subconsciously. And there's obviously literary theories that actually address this in more detail, but it's pretty well known that most of us are imparting our own psychology into the stories that we create. Some of us are being very obvious with it. Some of us are being very surreptitious about it. But every creator imbues his work with his own psychology. And oftentimes we are signposting or hiding elements from our lives in there. Sometimes we're working out through elements of our lives in there. And the more that we read, and that's to bring this back to Gene Yang, this is one of the things that has bothered me about his work, is that to read someone's body of work is the equivalent of spending a lot of time inside that creator's head. And so there are some creators where I spend a lot of time in their head and I go, you know what? I may not like this aspect of you, or maybe this aspect of you bothers me, but overall, spending a lot of time in your head does not make me feel angry at myself or angry at the world or angry at what you're trying to say. And so, like, for example, Doug Tenable, I have some issues with Doug here and there. Not a perfect guy. But having spent a lot of time inside his head, I'm like, you know what? Like, there's a lot of things I can appreciate. The more time I spent in Gene's headspace, the more irritated I got because of just his self-loathing plus his privilege became very difficult to stand. Because he became, he's very much had, I think Larry can identify with this, that quote about Orson Welles and Woody Allen, that sort of smarmy, self-effacing type of person who's always self-hating, but also has an enormous ego at the same time. And that's very Yang. It's a very Woody Allen type of thing. And it's just the more time I spent with that space, the more I didn't like it. To bring this back to zines, Reese, I've read some of your work. You have some issues. I read a good chunk of my work. When I read, it's Joe Jobs, right?
Oh yeah.
There is some deep-seated rage at society in that story.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so don't spoil it.
That's actually not mine.
Oh, okay.
Believe it or not, no, because it was a co-pro. I mean, I wrote it, but like the story was predominantly co-plotted with the artist. So
okay, all right. Because
so
somebody
was
somebody was mad.
So there's going to be a little bit of both of you in there.
Well, yeah, there's a little bit of both of us, and I mean, and there is some large things, and we both have complaints about how some of the stuff's been done, but a lot of what goes on in there is actually specifically geared at the world in which this exists, right? And so the reaction of Greg in that context relates a lot to his story and what we are putting him through.
All right, so I'm not talking about the story. I'm talking about the fact that when I read the story, I read through it and I was like, it wasn't just the story. I was like, there were some deep-seated, and it wasn't just displeasure, rage. And I was like, this is the type of rage that you can only tap into if you have worked a job that you hate in a society that you feel like is being unjust to you on some level. That's the type of rage that Joe Jobs has in it. Yeah.
Excellent.
And that's
excellent.
And that's what I'm saying.
Exactly
is like, and that speaks to you as a person. like there's a conversation. So like I said, when I get to getting into Reese, I'm gonna ask him more about that. And so no spoilers but that's the type of question that
by the way,
that
if
I would
this has
get into.
intrigued anybody, Joe Jobs is available on Global Comics for a
It is.
minimal fee. Or you can buy the whole thing on our Gumroad shop.
Yeah, Gumroad.
Yeah, idealcomics.gumroad.com.
So whenever Matt and my next project gets off the ground, you're gonna have some fun questions to ask Twitless.
Yeah, so like that's the type of thing that I think that I would love to do with a zine of this type. Because I want it, like I said, yes, Neostar. Yeah, I'm gonna breach the job interview persona. Exactly. What I was hoping to do with the zine personally is I wanted to sit down in a private interview and basically we don't have to publish the answers to all these questions. So if I got too personal and it was like, okay, that went somewhere that we don't want it to go, we don't have to publish everything, but it would be like we could draw from that interview and you'd get to know some of these creators on a level that you never got to know that you never do get to know them even on streams. And I think that to me was part of my real appeal for zines. But that's kind of now everybody's like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. See, that's the thing. As artists, we're all like, no, don't ask me those questions. But like, we totally want someone to notice that.
Oh, no, I'm pretty open in general.
I'm just saying, there's this thing about being a creator where like it's always partially a cry for attention. So like that's just part of the creative impulse, in my opinion. So anyway,
I've never had a lack of attention in my life.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that it comes from a lack. You can
The right attention.
Yeah, you can.
It came to me whether I wanted it or not. I'm just like, whatever.
Well, when you do the weird thing, somebody's going to notice.
Yeah.
It's not weird to me. It's just what I do.
Anywho, so
that's fair. That's fair. I can relate to that.
I
So,
was-
what do you think? What do you think of for time frame? Because that's the other thing I wanted to talk about. In addition to just talking about the general thematics of it and kind of what kind of participation people were looking for. Because I was honest, this little strip that I'm drawing out is, I think, something that would be a nice little addition.
yeah.
Provided you were wanting a crappy little politically aware strip.
I think like I said, if we're doing the zine culture thing, I think you kind of have to make it open to everything. Except for porn. I will draw the line at porn. I don't want.
Fair enough.
I don't want porn.
There's no porn. There's only plague.
Okay.
Doctor. All plague doctors all the way down. I'm just gonna.
All right. We got Star Storyteller in chat saying, "Hey everyone, hey good
Star.
to see you." We're talking about Zines.
Finally, you said it right.
What do we have in the back?
Oh, quiet you.
Oh, so like it looks like half of our panel just disappeared. Whoops.
Uh-oh.
That's okay.
Maybe you shouldn't have said Zine.
That maybe happened. So
Okay, so for time frame, I don't know. Like, I think getting like if Matt C wants to be the first featured creator, getting him to whip up the main thing for him was he needed to get through Kyrie first. So we need to check with him if he is at the place where he is done with Kyrie 3. Because I think that was the main barrier.
yeah, I know he was. I think he said he had 10 pages to completely finish. I mean, till he was complete. I think there's like it's been penciled, but it's not been like ever colored and lettered and everything up.
Yeah. So once I'll follow up with him because I think that would be the determining factor. Because he was so excited.
And he had to go talk about Rome tonight.
I know. I'll give him credit for that later.
Oh, do we know? Is he streaming on his channel? Do we know?
Stream snipe him. That's the way YouTube is.
Here, I'm gonna go check it out real quick.
That's how we do on YouTube.
Yeah, why not?
Are we all sticking around for that, or
No, yeah,
Are
yes.
we waiting to?
No, we're just no, don't worry.
This is a joke. It's a joke.
It's part, yeah. So it's partly a joke. Matt Reese is actually looking it up.
It is a little bit of a joke.
But so the thing is that once we can get, and I really wanted Matt C to be the first one because like he was so excited about it. He's like, I want to do this. Let's do this. I'm like, well then let's make you the focus of the first one. So like if we were to make him the focus of the spotlight, then it would just be making sure like, okay, when are you going to have those 10 pages done? When are you going to be able to like, sit down and whip something up in, like I said, I would make the deadline pretty brief. And it's like, because we don't want to be waiting 3 months for art. We don't want to, make it that type of a project. It's the type of thing where like, you're supposed to sit down, let the creative juices flow and bang it out in a week, And, so that's then it's just collecting everyone else's work. And I guess giving similar types of deadlines, saying, hey, we're going to give a week, 1 to 2 weeks, a month at most to basically all aboard the train. And then we just roll with whoever comes in with stuff. So I think that's a good way of approaching it. So we could definitely do this within a couple of months, I think. Hold on, I'll be right back.
Yeah, you kind of just want like a staggered deadline, right? Like the actual highlight first, and then like anybody else, maybe some slight overlap, but you definitely want to make sure that you have that before you get anybody else's.
Okay, well, he's definitely not streaming on his channel. So
I thought he said he was going to somebody else's before.
He probably said that. I'm probably just not remembering right because
no, he actually didn't even mention it. Just specifically streaming. Doesn't think Rome exists.
I guess that's existed. I mean, we all know the city.
There still exists. Obviously, there's a city there.
I mean,
it depends what you mean by Rome.
It could be like Wyoming.
Wyoming exists.
Oh,
the Wyoming doesn't exist is actually a Garfield reference.
Yeah. I remember that, but I'm like, I was born there. I'm 30 miles away.
I know. That's why I made the joke because
I was just there 2 weeks ago.
That's why I made the joke because not only is it a Garfield reference, but also you're from there. You're Wyoming adjacent.
This is true. Wyoming adjacent. And I am originally from there. I was born in Laramie. Spent like the first 3 years of my life there. Yeah.
Yeah, up until now, I thought the only people that didn't believe in Rome existed was just like the last 500 years of Rome don't get acknowledged by people because they don't believe in Byzantium for some reason.
Well, they just don't call it Rome because,
But it is.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, there's like, it is, but it isn't at the same time.
Yeah, it was because like Rome split in half, and like the half people care about died, so it's like whatever.
Well, and it didn't really die. That's the
yeah, that's true too.
About it, right? People are like, oh, the Eastern fell to barbarians. That's not entirely accurate. They moved in, and got voted into office, and then sort of dissolved the central government by voting for it.
Yeah.
It was the most amazing coup ever.
Yes, but here's the question.
Well,
why?
Long live the just.
Why can't we go back to old Constantinople?
Oh yes, the giant.
That would be because that would involve changing the religion of Turkey, and the Turks decided to genocide the people who had the religion that Constantinople belonged to.
I was hoping for an answer that was more rhymey.
Yeah. He just wants to reference the They Might Be Giant song.
Yeah. And the Giant song is actually a reboot of a previous song, which in turn is a reboot of a previous song.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I knew that somebody did
I think they're called the Irishmen. Is one of the Dubliners. The Dubliners is one of the famous people who did this song previously.
Oh, I'm familiar with the Dubliners. I was not familiar with that they did that song. Interesting.
I love their version of Molly Malone. It's a good song.
Indeed. Sort of. Actually, so Neo says, here's the thing is we're gonna go deep with this here. Neo says, so Matt is a figment of our imagination. Sort of.
Why didn't you tell me?
I don't know. See, I exist, but the only way any of you people know I exist is because your brains perceive. You don't have any physical evidence. All I am is light and sound.
Okay.
So you're trusting my existence on the likelihood that, you know, the unlikelihood rather that I'm some sort of.
All right. I don't want to get into Descartes and a whole bunch of other.
So I don't even think you have to go that deep. We just have streams here.
So
he
like,
could be like an AI for all we know.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm just saying, like, you know, that your experience of me is prompted by the stimulation of your imagination.
So back to zines. So I do have one question I would like to ask the artists, which is, and this is kind of like more of a poll type question. So chat would like to hear from you guys. Those of you who are interested, when we do throw out the call for comics, essentially, would it be easier or harder for you if we were to give a prompt? And it's like, we're looking for comics, but we're looking for comics in these kind of categories, as opposed to just open, just give us your poor, your tired, your huddled masses.
Definitely easier.
So what I'm thinking, since Matt tends to do more history-based comics, I'll consult with him. But if Matt often likes to do history-based type stuff, but he might want to branch out and do something different. But if to keep it on theme, maybe we go with, okay, if Matt is giving us a spotlight on history comics, we then say, hey, give us a comic that has something to do with history. It can be satire, fantasy, whatever, but have some relationship to history. Would that be more helpful for the artists?
For me, definitely.
Prompt. Okay, Delicake says prompt yes. Because that's what I'm thinking about doing, because that'll probably make it easier. Because if it's just give us a comic, it's like, what do I do? But for some people, maybe they, you know, okay, Neo Sir says agreed. Okay, so I'll consult with Matt and we'll try to keep it on theme. I'll ask him if he wants to do something history related, which is usually his bailiwick. But if he wants to branch out and do something different, because he was kind of saying, I really want to get into the zine, the spirit of the zine. So maybe he wants to do something different. But we can find and I'll message him tonight, and we can even start getting that nailed down.
Yeah, I think I'm indifferent because my plan from earlier fits.
Just, yeah, you're parodying. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense, and I like that idea. I do. I think that's such a good idea that I think that should be like what we do in the future volumes. Is have somebody do a parody of the spotlight person.
Yeah, the highlighted person.
Yeah. I think that's the way to go. That's actually, I think, a really cool selling point for it. So congratulations, you came up with the best idea of the night. Okay. Okay, so it looks like everyone's saying prompt yes. Okay, good. I'm glad we nailed that down. So it'll probably be pretty broad. So like I said, it'll be like relate it to blank somehow. And heck, even the thing that Reese was sketching, a plague doctor, is related to history. So that fits prompt. Even if the prompt is something historically related, then we're already on point with that.
I mean, Matt tends to be history and pulp.
He does, but like I said, when we were talking about it, he did say, like, I think he gave the impression he might want to try and do something like different. So I do want to double check with him on that. He's like, oh, I want to get into the zine energy. So I'm like, is this? Are we gonna get the Matt C. R. Crumb version? Essentially, we're gonna see what Matt C. does when he tries to be like Spiegelman in Raw or something.
That'd be funny. Yeah.
Whatever
the case is, if he does try to do something, just put my deadline like 2 days after his stuff comes in. It'll only take me like one session to knock it out.
Sure. That sounds good. I think the only thing then that we want to do is flesh out the other features then. because like I said, the thing that and I will give a hard deadline on it, but to see if it'll work or not. But I do want to reach out to some like names that you know and see if we can get some like 1-2 sentence reviews of like the first 10 minutes of you reading blank. I'd like to see if I could get that feature working. I think it would be really cool to add. But from what I've seen in zines as well, there's other elements we could put in depending on interest and who can do what. For example, there's often a lot of very brutally honest reviews of indie comic work. So we would want somebody potentially to, you know, do that. Or, you know, that's a thing. More than just 1 or 2 sentences, though. Like someone who actually gives like an in-depth review of a recent indie comic. Like, for example, like Curie #3 that's coming out pretty soon, right? But something that would be, like I said, brutally honest. So we probably want someone who is not a friend of Matt C. Because we get a lot of those types of reviews in our space where it's like we're friends reviewing friends. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But in the zine space, it's really great to have that separation where you get a super fan. Like someone like a Magabats, for example. Magabats will read your book and then he will tell you to your face that what he liked and what he did not like. And he is not afraid to tell you what he thinks. And he's not afraid to hurt your feelings. You know, we want people like that to give some brutally honest reviews. That's another thing that I think zines often have. Sometimes zines have things like crossword puzzles. Like sometimes they just have like little like just things that are
activities and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like so, like if someone like is like, I love to make blank. Sometimes you just go, okay, we're putting blank in there. So like this is kind of grab bag aspect.
Do you remember? Do you remember the ad "Safety Not Guaranteed"? The guy just putting like a whole bunch of like personal ads in his like little newsletter because he had to fill space. We could do something like that too.
Yeah. There were probably in our first couple of volumes, there probably will be some space filling needed. So if people like to do space filling stuff like a highlights, hidden items, picture, yes, there's just
that would be amazing.
I love highlights.
Especially if you could do one that like would mirror the thematics of the featured article.
Mm-hmm.
Do like Where's Waldo, but instead it's like Curie. They like what's the name of the main character from there?
Oh, I forgot.
It's like Mira or something like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's Mira.
Mira, yeah. They do like a Where's Waldo, but it's her hiding in the crowd somewhere. It's like a Roman, like the strip, the mall out there, and it's just a whole bunch of people in armor. Yeah.
Abigail, yes to the fake ads.
Yeah, I love that.
But we want
Necropolis. That's the word I was looking for.
We want fake ads that look like. Hold on.
I can show you exactly what you want.
No,
X-ray specs.
This is what we want.
All right, I mean, there's that.
We want Count. We want Count Dante ads.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Matt knows. Yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we did a whole before Christmas. We did that was a whole thing.
A whole bit.
Yeah. Sea monkey ads. I love sea monkey ads.
We want these.
Speaking of something with the zine aesthetic, I'm posting a news article about one in the private chat.
Here's the other cool thing is that if we were to generate too much material, we can simply put stuff in a second volume because eventually we'll have to see, like, depending on like how much stuff we get. But if we create a backlog, we can put stuff in a future volume because the goal is to make the zine able to ship like in an envelope. So whatever we create, we want to make it so that printing and distributing it is, hey, send me like $2, right? We don't want to make it expensive. So the cheaper we can go, so we can't make it too big, I guess, is what I'm saying. But we may not have that problem in the first volume anyway, if we're having to fill space. But
yeah, I need to make an ad like that for my books, for like joining the Fighters Guild.
yeah,
I'm gonna set the time aside for that.
Regular show did a Death Punchies. I think it was called Death Kwando or something.
Oh, nice. I've only seen like sparse episodes of regular show, so I probably haven't seen that one.
Yeah, it's fun stuff. Who do we lose? We lose Larry?
No, I'm still here.
Okay, we lost Cartoonicus.
No, only temporarily. I can bring it back in.
I have no idea what happened there.
Neostar says, seriously, I'll admit comedy isn't really my strong suit. So it doesn't have to be. Like I said, so when we put up the prompt, you do not have to make. So I do want to make this point. Zines do not have to be comedy. There was often a subversive edge to them, but a lot of the stuff that you see, there was a lot of satire, and there is a chunk of comedy in them. But not
I think a lot of people think satire inherently has to be comedic, but there's a lot of serious trying to drill a point in satire, like that old story about the guy in Ireland saying, hey, if we're running out of food, we can just eat the babies. Like, it's comedic to read it, but it's written dead serious.
That's Swift's Modest Proposal, yeah.
Yes, that one.
Great. That's a go out and read Modest Proposal. It's an excellent
but I think it's a great example.
Yeah. Swift's a good person to. He's a good. That's a good citation for satire. But the thing, he plays it straight is the thing.
The whole way through. It's a great read. I remember reading it back in like it's probably like 8th grade English class or something. But,
he spells out all the poverty, and then he says, well, there's no way to solve it. Well, then here's the most efficient way to solve it. Everyone in Ireland should eat their young. It would solve, and he outlines how much it would solve all of Ireland's, monetary and food issues. And the point was that when he plays it straight, is that you're supposed to point out how monstrous the whole thing is, and then we should do something else instead.
Or how like it's physically unsustainable because you're creating material and you're not getting it back in. So it's like you would just be slowly killing off your population regardless.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Cartoonicus did some of these. Yeah, he did the old scientists hate him ad.
Oh, those are pretty good. I like those.
Has science gone too far? So there was that. It's funny how those have died out. But back in the day, what was that? Mid 2000s, somewhere. Those you'd see those all over the place.
Anything for clickbait.
Doctors hate him. Learn these 8 secrets to blank.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's also because like those type of ads in general kind of got phased out. You don't have too many square ads on websites as much anymore.
Yeah. This drawing tip will change your life. You have a pencil in her nose. That's a good one. So at the end of the day, you end up, putting a bunch of other grab bag kind of stuff in there. I'm
just going with comedy because I think the idea of subverting your own highlight guest is like really punk and like counterintuitive. So it'd be great to see in like a zine.
Very much so. Yeah. I'm very looking forward to that. So I think the final thing we would be interested in looking for this type of publication would be editorials. I reached out to Cider Hype, and I think I'm going to have him write. I think we're going to call the editorial something like Apple Cider or something.
That's nice.
Yeah. And so the idea is to get, because Cider he's a great ranter. He'll rant on anything. And so we're just going to let him have a soapbox. And I think he's very entertaining. So editorials are another thing that I think we would be interested in. If anyone wants to, whip up an editorial about something going on in the industry, maybe that's our industry is indie comics. And there's plenty of stuff to complain about. And so if someone wants to just go on a tear, that is something that Zines also can provide a space for. That space has often been taken by YouTube streams and Twitter threads, but so that's just how things have evolved. But I think that would probably round out the content that we could probably provide in something like this. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think it's really helpful that Matt wants to go first, because basically we can get an idea, as we go, as this first part starts out.
And you can all see all the super invasive questions I'm going to ask. So,
and prepare.
Yeah. Prepare your Freudian chairs when I start asking about all your parents. Of course, when I start asking Reese, I'm just going to get a genealogy history that goes back 200 years. So I'm going to have to watch out for which parent questions I ask.
I like Neo Star's suggestion there.
Comic strip gag interviews. Oh, that's interesting.
That's a great idea. It's amazing.
Or we could do a parody interview with Cyberfrog.
Who?
That's Ethan Van's character.
Robot Toad.
Frog. He's not a toad. Robo Toad was John De La Rosa's parody. And then Robo Chode was the parody on the parody. Never mind.
Oh my.
I could just kept going.
And by the time you get to the zine, there's 8 parody levels deep.
Well, then Mark Brooks supposedly he copywrote. It got great. That got messed.
So this is just Inception in comics?
Well, it kind of always has been, really.
Yeah.
I mean, because Cyberfrog is just the Battletoads, which is just
Ninja Turtles.
Ninja Turtles, which is just a Daredevil, a Frank Miller's Daredevil.
I was going to say Daredevil, yeah.
I was just
Daredevil's Batman.
And if you want to do Batman, you can trace that lineage all the way to at least the Victorian period, and the Victorian Penny Dreadfuls. If you want to trace it far enough, and then if you then you can then take that thread and then trace it all the way up until Gilgamesh, essentially. So
yep.
I'm still
We're having the same conversation we had about Crazy Cat here.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, the Crazy Cat one. Yeah. Cartoonicus did a deep dive on that and ended up finding out some very interesting things about Crazy Cat and Felix the Cat and a whole bunch of other stuff I didn't know, which was very fascinating.
Hey, that could be a topic. Comic and cartoon cats.
I'll be up for that one.
Oh gosh, you've literally just created Cartoonicus.
A monster.
Cartoonicus's wet dream of all wet dreams.
Hey,
it's true.
I mean, you got
of all the ways you could have possibly put that.
Yeah,
I would say
your description might not be completely 100% accurate.
You got Felix, you got Fritz, you got Garfield, you got Heathcliff. Who was that cat that hung out in the junkyard and had the really hot girlfriend?
Heathcliff?
No. It was
you're talking about
Riff Raff.
Cadillac Cats.
Riff Raff.
Oh, okay.
I was talking about Riff Raff.
Yeah.
And then there's the Cadillac Cats.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd necessarily refer to his girlfriend as really hot since it's a cartoon cat, but
she was like a jazzercise girl, right?
Yeah,
that was the whole vibe you were supposed to get off.
That's true, and she was definitely slumming it with the.
Neostar brings
really
up a good point.
Cat.
I thought Cyberfrog was more of a Howard the Duck meets RoboCop. There is a strong, because I've read some of the original run of Cyberfrog. It's heavy into the satire angle. Ethan's actually pretty good at writing satire. I laughed out loud at the RoboCop levels of satire in early Cyberfrog. I think he's taken it because early Cyberfrog is essentially, and Reese, you know this because you read One Dirty Tree. Ethan was writing Cyberfrog when he was 12 or something. That's
16 at least.
It's informed by his adolescence initially, and then when he writes it now, it's informed by his
adolescence.
It's more informed by his
re-adolescence.
Well, he's grown up a bit, so his like Heather Swain is no longer the way he's Heather Swain is a mother because he's a parent. Like, so there's more of that in there as opposed to when I'm 12, or when I'm 15, this is the girl that I want to date. Which is very strong energy of that in the early
I know
stages.
Heather has the daughter, and he's trying to relate to the fact that this desired object of his is now a mother, and he now has to take care of the kid because the mother's taking care of him and the kid, and the mother always kind of took care of him.
The dynamics have changed is what I'm trying to say. It's no longer...
Yeah, I think he still does satire very well, though. It's just he mostly takes it off the page and puts it into his video production.
Yeah.
Referring to purely Cyberfrog, like Cyberfrog had a line in it where it was early Cyberfrog, where a guy is on a newscaster, says a bunch of teenagers died this week, but who cares? Because they're stupid teenagers. More at 11. Like the actual newscaster said, you know, a bunch of nobodies died and who cares? And it's and I laughed because it was really funny and came out of kind of left field. That's the kind of level of satire that like early Cyberfrog has. And I don't think Wrecked Planet has that level of people are dying. Who gives a crap? It's more like, you know, I think the tone is a little more serious. So like it has shifted. I'm not trying to make any grand
My
statement.
gosh, I'm looking at the illustrations online here, and they are playing it completely straight.
I was just going to say, did you discover that Ethan likes lines? Because he puts 10 million of them on the page.
And the coloring, and I mean, it's like,
that
this
hasn't
is
changed.
done
Yeah,
as
exactly.
a major comic production. Holy
Anyway.
cow.
Well, and think about the time investment in those lines. Really, it's been 3 years of lines.
It's a lot of lines.
You've really got to appreciate the dedication to lines.
It's pronounced leans.
I would never... That's funny. That's good.
That's the show, folks.
Yeah, we should end it there. We'll put a pin in it.
That's a perfect button to the show. So next week, we are going to broach the question of why aren't people talking about comics, and what we can do to change that. Probably keep talking about comics.
Yeah.
And the week after that, we're going to be discussing my favorite Wolverine comic, and then comic strips. What the heck's up with that? So those are it's really refined topics. We're the brain trust of the comics commentariat.
Or
here.
my favorite comic strip, and why is it Pogo? And why your answer should be Pogo and no question.
Or Little Abner.
It's just Pogo. Pogo, and then Calvin and Hobbes, maybe.
What about Kathy?
Jeez, Kathy's okay. I'm not a hater. It's just, you know, a lot of those strips. Cartoonicus and I were talking about this. A lot of strips, you can tell. I mean, the creators have just run out of gas at a certain point, and anyway.
Oh yeah, like I like the Wizard of Id, but I think I've seen the same joke like 105 times.
Right.
Well, and some of it depends on what the purpose of the strip is. But that's a topic for 3 weeks from now.
Exactly.
So let's save that for 3 weeks from now.
Yeah.
So thanks for tuning in. We are hoping, everything allowing, that from here till at least June, people, a show every week. I want to make that happen. I believe that that's what we need to do.
All right.
So next week, we'll be here to talk about. We'll be back to talk about comics. And keep an eye out for the Zine announcement. I'm stoked for that.
Yep.
And it's Plague Doctors all the way down. Until next time, keep reading comics.
Peace. Read Omega Girl.
Oh yes, buy Omega Girl. It's available on a Indie Planet, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. That's it. Good night.